Shardul Shroff joining us on the phone line right here on this edition of India Tonight. Mr. Shroff, good evening. Nantara Rai here in New Delhi. You know, one view is that, of course, the Reserve Bank had to do this. It is now the stipulated law. But you still have a lot of experts saying that why did it take so long for the DHFL board to be superseded? Mr. Shroff, for all those that are watching you tonight and watching this edition of India Tonight, what can we expect next? Yes, the board has been superseded, but we don't even know how bad the mess might be at DHFL simply because the auditors had refused to sign the earnings report last time.
So, Nayantara, what would happen is, the first and foremost, what has happened is that the Act essentially, the IBC Act essentially did not originally provide for non-banking finance companies as financial service providers to be regulated by IBC. This is the reason why in the case of IRNFS, the matters did not go under IBC. They were treated under company law. For the first time after the introduction of new rules which regulate FSPs or financial service providers, this is the very first act where the Reserve Bank, which is the authorized party, has identified the authorized representative who will act as the resolution professional, and that has been nominated by the RBI, as is the law. Now, what the RP will also do is, he will not have, obviously an individual who is the next managing director of IOB will not have the backup to take over the custody of all these branches, and that's what is the requirement of company law, that you have to take, rather IBC, that you have to take the entire enterprise and the assets which are spread over all over India into your management and control. For that reason, the next step will essentially be to hire out people who have that wherewithal. Typically, the accounting firms or other, licensed resolution professionals who have created that infrastructure act for that purpose. Now, one will have to see that whether or not this individual, the former managing director of IOB, has that wherewithal, or is he going to rely upon the companies which have this sort of infrastructure and create a sort of a sub-agency reporting into him? Because to expect a solo practitioner or a single person to take the entire enterprise of DHFL into his control is next to impossible. That's the requirement of the IBC, but for an individual to do it, I find it's very difficult to swallow. So the first step is to take control, then to get the accounts which are, in a partially approved stage or at least identified up to a particular point of time. They will have to be qualified or completed by a third-party auditor who is brought in for the purpose of completing the accounts and identifying disputed accounts. Whatever is not correctly written, or whatever is contrary to accounting standards, or whatever is contrary to law in terms of a fraud, all those have to be identified as questionable accounts, and they have to be then segregated so that if an application or if a proceeding has to be taken out against the directors, then based on identified facts, true facts, correct evidence from the company's account books, that action will take place, because under the IBC, fraudulent transactions and preferential transactions, all these can be opened up. So this is going to be a systematic process. It's not going to be an overnight process. There will be stage-wise, just like you have 330
Absolutely.
days now. So, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, Mr. Shroff, hi, good evening. This is Ruchi Bhatia from the Delhi newsroom. Help us understand, because this is going to be the first such cases where a financial institution could be taken to NCLT. How different is the entire process going to be, with respect to the companies that go to NCLT, and what will be the key challenges here? Because this is for the first time that a financial institution is being taken for insolvency.
Okay. So let me, Ruchi, tell you straight away that typically it's the manufacturing companies or service companies which are dealing with whether engineering products or EPC arrangements. Those are the types of companies which have gone into the resolution process under the IBC. Here you have a bank or a shadow bank, as you call it, dealing in cash, dealing in money, dealing in securities as pledged assets, dealing in loans and mortgages, dealing in securitization, which are all money products or money, and they're not goods. So that is the first and most unique difference between a financial service provider getting into a resolution plan, which will essentially mean that if you're doing, say, a resolution plan, you have to rework the loan, you may have to cancel overdues, you may have to go after the people who have done a fraud on you, because fraud follows, and fraud doesn't, it has to be unraveled. If somebody has diverted funds and somebody else is a recipient of it, how do you recover those amounts? All these questions will arise in the case of DFHL, and which is the element which is unique, because you can't give a financial service provider to a manufacturing company. The universe of people who can resolve this kind of dispute are financial service providers. So you will have to find a solvent financial service provider who is willing to take over DFHL, which is again a financial service provider, and rework all these issues which are
I take your point, Mr. Shroff,
to create a viable SI.
Right, Mr. Shroff, Nayanthara again. So from what you're also basically telling me, that while we try to achieve this viability, we don't know how bad the mess is, right? Like you said, the second step is going to be to figure out the accounts, which I guess the corollary of that would also mean that it's too early, Mr. Shroff, to have a conversation of what kind of haircuts that we're talking about. There's going to be a domino effect. There's going to be a cascading impact. It started with INFS, and we need quicker resolution. INFS still is not resolved. We need DHFL to be sorted out just to make sure that credit comes back into the system and the economy gets going.
You're absolutely right. And here again, one of the issues which is going to arise is like the problem which happened to home buyers. There are such vast number of home buyers with different perspectives or purposes. So there may be guys who want the money back. There are guys who can say, okay, I'm willing to go along with the credibility of the new person who's going to come. I want to see how much, what is the least that he can cut and pay me back my original amount, or maybe take a discount of 10% or 20%. So the perspectives are different. There you are dealing with giving a person a flat. Here you're going to deal with persons who want their deposit back, and how much interest or yield is going to happen on that. So the whole concept here is going to be a totally unique kind of solution, because you're brought in money, a person who deals with money and not goods and not services. So that's the fundamental change, and therefore protecting all these stakeholders which are involved, their representative capacity. Can you, for example, hear 1 lakh people? You can't. So how will that be dealt with in the case of a representative person? How do you create the representative person? Will you apply the rules of home buyers in a different way to deposit holders? There are lots of challenges and lots of creative things which will have to be done, because currently what they've done is a very shortcut remedy, basically saying, okay, systemically important NBFCs are covered by the law, because there's a procedure set. Currently, there is no procedure in the RBI Act or the Banking Regulation Act of reworking and doing a resolution. So what the government has provided you is not short-term. It is a 330-day process at least, if not more, because Supreme Court has clearly said now that it's not mandatorily to finish in 330 days. So expectation is 330 days, but what might actually happen maybe a year and a half, because the problems are unique. This is not like doing a resolution of a company which is, as I said, engaged in manufacturing or trading or services.